Yo, what's up, you guys? So today we're talking about portraits, something that I don't do a ton of. I'm a street guy, but I do have some work in this area, and I have a tip for you, a little secret if you hang on just a minute and let me tell my story. That'll help you out when it comes to doing these. So let's run the intro, do the usual stuff, and then I'll get into it. Okay, so like I said, we're dealing with photography and we're dealing with portraits. So when you're dealing with portraits, one of the hardest things to do is be comfortable. Be comfortable being a photographer, because there are two elements in this that will drive you absolutely insane. And the first one is obviously yourself. So you're going to be in your head, you're going to be worried about your gear, you're going to be worried about your composition, your exposure, all of those things. So that's the first element. The second one is your subject. So in this case, that's you. So if I'm the photographer and I'm trying to take your picture, you're going to have elements that are going to make you awkward, or make you feel weird too when I do something. So you're probably just reacting to what I'm doing. So if this were like a paid for session, you're going to follow my lead. You're going to expect me to know everything. And then if I'm not really super experienced, I might not know all those things, and that's going to throw you a vibe. So there are two elements here. Me and you, or me and the subject, you and the subject, whatever you want to say. So the question is, how do you deal with those things when you're trying to be more of portrait oriented in photography? So like I said when I started this off, is that I typically shoot street photography, which typically means a lot of candids and a lot of portraits in the streets. So it doesn't always have to be a city, but it's usually somewhere in an urban environment, dealing with people just doing their usual things. And these are a little bit different because even though they involve people and sometimes they are really close up, they're not necessarily the same, because my subject doesn't always either realize they're my subject, or by the time they do realize it, I've kind of already taken the photo anyway. So when you deal with things like that, it's a little bit different than true portrait photography, almost like a studio session, whether that's actually in a studio or somewhere else. So I want to make that little bit of a clarification, but I do have some tips, I think, that have helped me out when I've tried it. So I want to share those with you guys. So tip number one deals with the fact that, like I said, there's two elements, you and the other person. So when you're dealing with that issue, what you need to be able to do is be comfortable with your shooting abilities. So this tends to mean that you need to be comfortable with your camera. So first, make sure you know how to run that thing inside and out. You know all the features, you know how you like to shoot. Maybe you already have like a style developed, or maybe you're working on one. But that tends to mean that you're going to be comfortable with the camera. So that's going to take a lot of the work off of you, because once you're comfortable operating your camera, whatever it is, whether it's film or digital, it's going to help you out in the long run, because you're not going to be throwing that vibe of, I don't really know what I'm doing. And the second part to, I guess, tip number one deals with your ability to be comfortable with yourself. So this isn't really like a talk on like personal introspectiveness or anything like that. It's more of just like, be mindful of your body motions, be mindful of your own mindset, go into it with a positive attitude, because when you give off positivity, your subject is going to exude that same positivity, which is what you want. If you ever exude like negativeness or negativity, you will definitely get a bad picture, because your subject will just feel that, and I promise it'll come out terrible. I've experienced it. And tip number two deals with the second element. So that's how to make sure that your subject is comfortable. So basically, the easiest way to handle this issue is being comfortable with yourself, the first part, obviously. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to give off that vibe of just comfortability. So when you say, hey, I really like that pose you just did, or if they were just moving around, you can say, hey, can you do that again? Little vocal cues can show a little bit of, what do you say? Knowledge. So you're able to exude that you've seen something that you really like and you think they'll like it. Or if it's in the case, if it's for your work or whatever, and you really like those photos, being able to give some of those vocal cues and clues and things like that, things that you see while you're taking photos, people like will answer to that. They'll do exactly what you want to do, because they want the photos to come out really well too. So obviously, if you're shooting for somebody else and it's for Instagram or something like that, or you actually have a paid job, there's a reason why you're taking those photos. So you want them to come out good, and the other party wants them to come out good. So by doing this, being comfortable with yourself, you can make the other party feel really comfortable. And that really helps when you're talking about portraits and things like that. And step number two is actually making sure that you're shooting the right subject for, let's say, your skill level. So if you're somebody that is looking at this video, more than likely you don't have a ton of experience when it comes to portraits because you're looking at this kind of content, which makes a lot of sense. A waterfall started from a drop. A 1,000-mile journey started with a step. You know, that whole saying, those all old proverbs. So the idea is that you don't have a lot of experience. So you don't want to go looking into taking photos with Nike or taking photos of Apple products hoping that Apple's going to pick that up or whatever, or you're going to shoot for like a model campaign. It's probably not going to work out because there are people that are at that caliber, and that's not you yet. Not saying that you won't be there, but right now what you're trying to do is find those things that can give you that experience. So one thing that I would like to say to you when it comes to this is find your family and your friends who are willing to shoot with you, who you're comfortable with, and take their photos. Do those portrait sessions. I know this is kind of like cliche because you hear that a lot, but I promise it's more than just cliche. It's absolute truth. Because when you're actually comfortable with the person that you're shooting, they come out way better than if it's like a stranger sometimes, because you're more comfortable. And there are things that you'll ask your friends to do or your family to do when it comes to like movements or whatever that you won't ask a stranger, even though you want to. So this could be something like where you're going to have them do a pose, and you want that person to feel comfortable doing that because, like we talked about before, you want to be comfortable, they want to be comfortable. So if you're comfortable enough to ask somebody to do that, and they're comfortable with doing it, then your photos are going to look amazing because you're able to get that comfortability in that photo, and then you get the composition and all those other things that you like. Versus if you were going to just try and ask a stranger on the street. So one of the hardest things with street photography that plays into this is dealing with strangers. So I know some people have zero problem with this and will go out anywhere and ask anybody to take that photo, and it'll come out great. If that's not you, it's okay. Don't start with strangers. If you're going to do strangers, work on some things like I do, like with street photography, where you're trying to be a little more nonchalant or whatever, a little more behind the scenes with your photography versus blatantly outright in their face. So make sure you're working with people that you're comfortable with. That's definitely the biggest part. And I know I really only put like 2 steps with this, but that's kind of how basic this can be, besides getting into all the camera essentials and techniques and all that. And that's really how portraits should be, I think, especially for starting out. So I want to save a little bit of time to show you a couple of photos that I did just like this, where myself and my 2 friends, this is Chad and Alyssa, and they're some of my greatest friends. We went to high school together a long time ago. And one day I asked them if they would let me take like a portrait shoot of them both and let me get some like couple stuff, something that I could share for social media, because I wanted something for that purpose. And of course they said yeah. So what's really great about this is that fact that, like I said, I'm comfortable because I know them. They're comfortable because they know me. And then the second part was like, I'm not dealing with strangers, so there's that comfortability, and then there's also the fact that I'm comfortable with my camera, I'm comfortable with how I work it. It's just comfortability. I guess that's like the key word of this, is just being comfortable with the people that you're shooting and the way that you're shooting. So these photos came out so well because of just that aspect. So I was able to take my time, shoot how I wanted to, take all sorts of shots, ask them to do things. They already knew some of them because they've been through some of this situation before where they've had other people, other photographers do professional shots for them. So they're used to being asked to do things. So that helped me out. So I didn't go out to the street trying to find somebody and ask them to do some weird, like over the head, like touching the back of your head photo. These were my friends, my buddies, and it was super easy. So I think that's what will really help you when you're looking to get into portrait photography. And with that, I guess I'm going to end it on that note, because I think all of that information is more than enough for you to get started. So go out, practice with your camera, get your friends and family, ask them to take really close, cool shots, ask them to do some crazy poses, and get those shots, get that experience. I know this will help you out. And if you want to help me out, you know, the biggest thing is hitting that like button down there and letting people know that you liked it, because then it kicks it out to everybody else and they get to see it too, which helps me out because I get to make more content just like this. And if you want to, make sure you subscribe, because I know you'll like the next video. I promise. It's always good. And if it's not, then I'm sorry, but maybe with something down the road will be. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to hit you with and I'm going to peace out now. I'll see you in the next one.